Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight for our first night of Startup Grind Miami. I'm Jason Ibera. I will be your host. How this came to be was there's a chapter of Startup Grind in Tampa. And about 2 months ago I was in Tampa and came across it. And I said, well, I'm from Miami. We've got everything in Miami. So when I get back to Miami, I'm going to go to Startup Grind. And I looked it up, and there was no chapter here in Miami. So I contacted them, asked them what's up with that, and they said, well, we've had some applicants, why don't you apply? Let's see if we'll let you start. So that was about a month and a half ago, and they advised that we launched Miami in 3 months, and I didn't want to make you all wait that long, because I knew that all of you wanted to start a grind here too. So this month is a month that Google for Entrepreneurs has branded as 40 Forward. And it's Google for Women Entrepreneurs Month. So I wanted to make sure and hit this month and showcase a woman in our community who's done a lot to help bring us forward as an entrepreneurial and startup community. So on a 6-week timeline and some help from our friends here at the lab, we got this together. We'll bring Nancy out in just a minute, and when we do, I want you to give her the warmest standing ovation. That I want you just imagine the biggest person that you've ever. Steve Jobs just came back to life, okay? Because we're bringing her in today, and she's made time for us, and she makes time for us all the time. So when we bring her out, we want to get a huge standing ovation for her. So let's just practice that real quick. I want everyone to stand up. I want everyone to stand up. Let's pretend to come up. All right, great. You guys are pros. So yeah, the format tonight will be 45 minutes of interview with Nancy. I'd like you to hold your questions to the end just so we can get through the interview questions. I've done some surveying, so some of you have given me some questions to ask. They will be asked. And at the end, we'll do a Q&A session. And also, Nancy's been graceful enough to say that she'll stay for an hour at the end and network with us. So if you all have any one-on-one questions you'd like, and I encourage you all to network with each other. You really never know who you're sitting next to, in front of, and you just never know the connections that you might make. That's why I love a place like this, like the lab that's hosted us here today. I've met a lot of great people being here. A lot of great things happen here. So I'd like to say thank you to the lab, and Danny, and everyone here at the lab that have helped make this possible. Now, without any further ado, we'll have Nancy come on out. Please come on out, Nancy. Thank you. So I'll be the first to say I've never done this before, so yeah, I'm going to cheat. I've got an iPad with some notes on it. But that makes me cool too, right, because I've got an iPad? So Nancy's been here in Miami following entrepreneurship and business for over a decade. As recently as August of last year, she started the Starting Gate blog and started following us entrepreneurs and startups on her blog on a regular basis. And in October of last year, she dedicated herself to that. She's just 100% Starting Gate. So Nancy, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got into journalism? Give us a kind of elevator pitch on how you got into journalism and why business, and how did it evolve into following Miami startups?
Okay, well, I've basically always been in journalism. I've always been in journalism all my life, I guess. You guys, some of you guys were having businesses at 7 or 8, and I had, the neighborhood newspaper at 7 or 8. So, I've always been doing that in junior high and high school as well, and in college. And then my first job outside of the college was at the Orlando Sentinel for a while. Then 5 years after that, I got a job at the Miami Herald, which I had been trying since every year because it was my goal to be here. I've always loved Miami and loved the Herald. And then I moved out to California for a few years in the 90s, for 5 years in the 90s. And at that point is when I kind of got into business. Before that, I was always in local news or world news or national news. So when I moved out to San Jose, the San Jose Mercury, it just seemed like, well, okay, moving across the country, might as well try something totally different. So they had a job in the business section. So, obviously it's all tech all the time there. I didn't know anything about tech. One of the other editors there kind of said, a couple people kind of pushed up their noses because I didn't have tech experience. One of the other editors said, well, this is good because, we're writing for the general audience people, and if she doesn't understand it, they aren't going to understand it. So that was sort of my role in the early years, was to push things back that were too jargony or too technical for the general audience, because we were writing for the general audience, even for West San Jose. And it was, of course, a little bit more sophisticated readership. It's still the general audience. So anyway, I was there for 5 years, and then we moved back to Miami, and I rejoined the business. I joined the business department in the Miami Herald then, and I've been there on and off ever since. I took a few breaks here and there to try out on my own or just to try different things. But for the most part, I've been in the Herald business section. Always have a lot of hats on. I've been an editor, I've been a daily section editor, I've been a Sunday Money section editor, I've been a Business Monday editor, and I think that's when I got kind of interested in the entrepreneurship beat. And then, as Jason said, last year I finally was able to write full-time. I was just kind of writing on my own because the Herald didn't have a tech writer. And it was just seemed like a need to cover entrepreneurship that needed to be filled. So I just started doing it on the side, in my own spare time. I actually started the blog in 2012, however, it really started picking up last year. And that's basically it. As part of my duties as a business editor through the years, I started coordinating the Business Plan Challenge. So that's our annual contest we've been running since 1999. So that's kind of how I got interested in entrepreneurship. And then during that entry period, which is about 6 or 8 weeks, we'd also run more articles than usual about entrepreneurship, and I'd write those. So, over the years, I got more and more into it as far as covering entrepreneurship. And I love covering entrepreneurship because it's, it's so exciting to cover growing, optimistic industries and seeing things sprout from the ground up. And especially, where I am, I'm in the traditional media where we're constantly cut. So it's it's a really nice change to be covering something that's growing.
Great, thank you. What you mentioned that at some point things were really picking up. There's more demand for the content covering the entrepreneurship. And that was in 2012. You started blogging. What do you see happening in the Miami community? What do you see coming together? How do you start to hone in on entrepreneurship down here?
Just the energy. I mean, it seems like in the past year, even a little longer than that, but the past year and a half, 2 years, There's been a whole lot more energy around entrepreneurship, a whole lot more events and things to cover, and groups getting organized, and a movement taking shape. And as well as maybe there were just as many before, I'm not sure, but I know about a lot more startups now. It seems like every week I hear about a new startup coming to town, a new startup launching or whatever, every week a few of them. So it seems like anecdotally, and I've been trying and haven't really found a great super database to kind of track this stuff, but it seems like anecdotally there's a lot more action now.
Understood. So you guys hear that? This is the next startup. We need a database to track all this stuff. Well, co-working spaces, incubators, accelerators, launch pads. I mean, a couple of years ago, Miami didn't have much more than a Regis shared office space. And for somebody getting into this, I know even for myself, looking for a space like this, I had a little confusion as to what the difference was. And I went out and test drove a few of them. I sat down and worked in a few of the local spaces. The difference between maybe Pipeline as an option, or Venture Hive, or MET 261, or the Lab. What have you seen as the differences in them, and can you help bring a little bit of, just shine a little light on the subject for somebody that's thinking about getting into a similar space? And can I be?
Sure. Basically, I think you do exactly what I tell people to do. When people ask me that, I have a little list. I send them the list. All those names are on it. I guess I'd probably add the new one now, Access in Fort Lauderdale. That looks awesome too. But basically, they're so different, and everyone has their own vibe and their own different attributes that it's really, impossible to say. For me to say to you what would be best, you have to. I think everybody has to test drive it, and it depends on what factors are most important to you. Whether it's having a ton of events like the Lab does, or having access to the Metro Rail, which some of the other ones do, to having the restaurants around that they like, the hours. Some are open 24/7, some of them aren't, some of them aren't open on weekends. So. If that's not important to you, then that doesn't matter. So, it's kind of like you did exactly the right thing. I can imagine you'd have a spreadsheet and kind of, the things that are important to you, and then which ones check off the most boxes. And then you go actually and try them out, and you get a feel of the vibe and whether that's the right one for you. So I guess that's what I would say. You do the right thing, check it out.
And you say that some of them, what I found were some of them more mixed use than others, some of them more startup focused, technology focused. Yeah,
and on all of them, to a certain extent, curate their memberships, and they all have somewhat of a different formula. Some of them are more like 50-50 tech startups versus everything else, and some of them try for more of a mix. And again, it depends on what you want. Which is right, but and also I would say spend time with the founder or the managing director or whoever's there running the day-to-day, and see if you click with that person too, because that's a real key thing. But I would say, find out what their mix is and how they what their recipe is.
And from co-working space to an incubator to an accelerator, what's the, when you really distill it down, what's the difference between the two? The two that kind of were the fuzziest for me was the difference between an incubator and an accelerator.
Yeah, usually the accelerator has like a 12-week program, intense program, where you have to be accepted into it, and it's very structured. Whereas an incubator is a longer period of time, sometimes 1 year to 3 years, or sometimes even longer, but usually somewhere up to around 3 years. And you can usually take advantage of some of the programming that's in the accelerator. but it's not quite the level of structure, curriculum, and everything else that the accelerator has. Usually,
Okay.
they're all a little different.
So accelerator is like the most intensive, incubator kind, somewhere in the middle, and the co-working space is just
And the
somewhere-
incubator can be longer, and then some of them, after an accelerator, they'll go into an incubator, for another year or two.
And as you've seen this bubble up in Miami, and what I think has been a rapid evolution, what do you feel are the unique selling propositions for Miami as a place to start a startup? And I think we hear a lot, and some of us aren't focused on it, that we're the link to Latin America. What do you think about that, and what do you think about our unique selling propositions beyond that?
Well, what I hear is, I do hear that, Latin America is truly one of our differentiators. I think that's true. I think that, when you compare us to other areas, that's one of the main things that you can say we have that most other areas don't. It's cool that we can be a soft landing place for Latin American businesses, and that's a great acceleration proposition for them to either move their business whole-handedly or move their U.S. operations here, or to launch into the U.S. or whatever. So I think that and it's in a place that they'll feel comfortable with the culture. So I think that that's a huge selling point. I mean, I think other selling points that I hear about from you guys is that even though I think it's getting up there now, but it's still a little bit of the cost of living is still less than some of those areas. The rents I hear are, and that scares me, but right now it's certainly cheaper than New York or San Francisco or some of those other larger cities. So I think that that's one of our differentiators. And I think that I'm starting to be sold to this creative hub thing, because look at where we are here. This is amazing. Wynwood's amazing, and why couldn't we be a creative hub, right?
Yeah. What was the original, or what does LAB stand for? Was it Life?
And I think they call it Learn, Act, Build now, but
Yeah,
it used to be
original.
Love Art Business.
Love Our Business. So yeah, it was,
I still like the original one. I like the word business in it, but anyway. Love art, I love that.
Like I mentioned, I think it's it's been snowballing here relatively quickly. If we think about the fact that the Knight Foundation has been it's kind of taken us under their wing for just 18 months now. And if we look around, it seems like this must have been going on for some time. 18 months is a very short period of time in the grand scheme of things. So we've got that going on. We've of course got the startups, the spaces for the startups to operate out of. I've even recently seen some developers transplanting from Silicon Valley to South Florida to get involved in startups over here. Kind of like that mentality of why be a fish in a big sea, where you come over here and be part of a groundswell and be part of a movement.
And I get lots of emails and tweets and things from people who are checking it out all the time. Yeah, and new followers that say they're thinking about moving here and just kind of trying to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they are from Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and what kind of reasons are they giving you?
Just because they're hearing things that are happening, and I think some of it has to do with the cost of living, and everybody I think knows what's happening in San Francisco right now. Talk about costs getting out of control. That's kind of what I'm hearing. They're starting to look at other places.
Understood. And what other key indicators do you see here that are letting you know that you've made a great decision to dedicate yourself to coming to these events and interviewing us and focusing on Miami entrepreneurs?
key indicators of
maybe
movement or?
yeah, I learned about the how much money we brought in venture capital by following your blog this quarter. So we're starting to see some money come this way. So things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a steady improvement in a lot of areas, not as much in the money, but a little bit this past year, but seen a steady improvement in a lot of areas. I think for me, maybe it was last fall in the Maker Fair that they had here, when they had such an awesome turnout of, to almost 2,000 people, and seeing all those kids and those families and those kids who couldn't get enough of this stuff and wanted to stay all day. That just told me that, hey, we have a future, because, we got all these future engineers right there. And I thought for a first-year event to have that many people interested in computers and technology and entrepreneurship, wow.
Yeah, so we know the next generation's onto it too.
And also I really like that all these programs that are starting for kids. I wrote about it a couple of months ago, and I started out with maybe 3 or 4, and every couple of days I'd find out about another one. So they'd tell me about another one, do another one, and and I'm sure I left a whole bunch out. I was just trying to do a sampling, but again, a lot of them were trying to supplement what the schools weren't providing. I mean, they tried, but their budget's strapped. We understand that, but the fact that there were all these homegrown groups and also groups like Girls Who Code and those kinds coming in as well is a very good sign, I think.
Yeah, and for us adults too, we've got coding camps here now too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
and there's all these great ones coming up in the summer for kids, so it's right here at the lab.
Yeah. And speaking of first-year events, how do you see Emerge Americas this year?
I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was a great turnout and fantastic first year. And see what happens next year. It's great.
Yeah, and I enjoyed Startup City as well. It was a great event. And if any of you didn't make it out to those larger events, definitely recommend getting out to them. And in general, in all the lessons you've seen others learn through the years and being successful and having their hiccups and maybe having to fold up shop and wait for the next big idea, are there any commonalities, any lessons learned that you've watched other people learn that you can share with us, for those of us that will put down our guard and not be stubborn and learn from other people's mistakes?
I mean, I guess what I've come to learn from reporting on you guys and hearing it so often, but not just hearing it from the gurus, but also just seeing it in action, is just the importance of having a great team. You always hear that, but complementary skills. Sometimes I find less of that now. In the beginning, a few years ago, when I started covering startups, I find a lot of instances where it'd be, a couple people and they're all exactly alike. They're all developers or whatever. Or a couple, they didn't have any marketing people on the team. They didn't have any whatever. Now I'm seeing more and more that this is, that you guys are looking at that. So I guess I'd say that, and the other usual advice that I see more and more of now is the beta testing. Beta testing early, testing out your product idea early before you get too much into it. Continuing to learn from that. Yeah.
So take feedback and don't fall in love with your product too much.
Well, that's impossible for the guys to say that, right? You're already in love, but yeah, just to continue iterating, continue tinkering, and don't fall in love with it going one way, right? So, and it's just the usual kind of thing. Perseverance and passion. Passion goes a long way too, for sure.
And what are some, maybe one or two startups that maybe you feel passionate about? Maybe you saw them starting at a very early stage. Maybe you saw it as a couple of guys in the bedroom and interviewed them when they were pretending that they had an office,
Make it to make it right.
Faking it till they made it, and now they've made it.
I don't want to go there.
Well,
I try to stay objective, and I like all the companies I cover. I mean, I don't want to single out anybody, but in general, I would say that in general, I'm looking forward to the future, to seeing some of these grow up and getting more companies kind of in the middle layer that we don't seem to have as many of right now. Certainly there are a few, but we need more of these companies to grow and get to that middle layer.
And do you see, when these companies are getting funding, and have you seen more and more money coming from right here in South Florida, maybe Latin America, or is it stay kind of steady where the money is, people are having to travel for the money?
I'm still hearing a lot that people are traveling for the money. They're still finding it in Silicon Valley or Boston or other places, Chicago, Latin America, whatever. When I do hear about funding that's all local, that's very exciting. It just doesn't happen too often. But hopefully that will change. Hopefully continue to get better.
And I think for when you have a startup and you're trying to get it out there, and you're trying to get in touch with someone like you, sometimes someone that's in the media seems a little bigger than life, and I think it's important for people to understand that you're looking for content, as long as it's good content and it's not overspun. What suggestions we can give to people for getting in touch with yourself or with reporters, and also what would you recommend as the cadence from going from one medium to the next, so you maybe don't get published in a certain publication and then another publication won't touch you, and that way you can make sure and spread the PR across the board.
Well, to answer your second question first,
Okay.
That kind of thing is happening a little bit less now. We're more, as the media has shrunk, we share a lot more. We're like for instance, the Miami Herald runs Sun Sentinel and Palm Beach Post articles all the time, and vice versa. And sometimes we'll call them up and ask them, are you covering so-and-so? This is a great story. And this kind of thing never happened until a few years ago, and now it does. So, I think the good news is most startups aren't going to hear, I don't think. I mean, I certainly don't do it, and I don't know any of my colleagues who do it say, oh, well, if you give this story to anybody else, we're not going to write about you. Yes, of course, I want to be first. Of course, sometimes, I don't, kind of say, I'd love to be able to do your story at some point. But, no one's going to fault you for trying to get in any of the publications you want. So that's a good news, and it's also good news in that if you don't get my attention, but you get the Sun Sentinels, it might end up in the Herald as well. So that's good news for you. For your second question, well, I prefer email. I try to go to a few events every week, depending on what's going on, 2 or 3 often, and I like to hear what's going on. As you know, there's one of me and like 1,000 of you, so unfortunately I can't write about every every startup launch or whatever, even though I'd love to. It's just impossible. Plus, you know, I'm supposed to be thinking more thematically and writing more thematically. So it is good to really keep me posted on your developments and on how you're developing and develop a relationship. And it's kind of a journey. I can't promise you that every development I'll put on the blog. Sometimes I will, though. And just keep me posted. And if you don't hear an email back right away, it doesn't mean I don't like you. It's just that we do get a lot of emails and stuff. But anyway, what I look for mainly is as far as startups that I cover. It's kind of a combination, and it's kind of an art rather than a science, and it's not a perfect art, but I look for, first of all, startups that have made some traction, usually past their launch, usually past their beta, usually they've already got some customers, blah, blah, blah. They've passed some real milestones. And I also look for a mix. And I also look for startups that aren't tech too. I cover those as well. So, you know, I'm constantly also trying to get more startups that aren't tech also into my coverage. So I look for a mix. You know, if I had sort of I do startup spotlights, for instance, and sort of if I had a run of enterprise, whatever, software makers, you know, something in music or something might float my boat, or something that's not tech. So I'm always looking for a mix that way as well. As far as getting in touch with me, email or at networking events is good. And I love to be, for instance, you know, put on lists. If you send out newsletters or whatever to your supporters, I love to be put on lists, because that way it keeps your startup on top of mind. So if I'm writing a story about video game companies, I might know about you, right? So I may not know otherwise, or whatever it is, or some sort of subject area. So that is very helpful. And I don't know, why don't you all ask me questions about that? I don't think that, especially you know, early startup, I don't think you need to have a PR person. Obviously, there are some great PR people, and there are some that are less great. But anyway, there are some really good ones, and certainly it helps to get a really nice press release that I can just quickly put on Starting Gate to you know, make it quick and easy. But I don't think it's necessary for everybody. I do notice that I don't know if it has to do with the right brain, left brain, or what, but I do notice that I think that technologists in general are pretty good writers. I don't know why, but I find that. Maybe more so than in a lot of industries that I've covered before. So, you know, I'd suggest, and you probably already do this, but, you know, I'd suggest to have 3 or 4 paragraphs of boilerplate stuff at the ready about your company, about your story, about whatever, that you can slap on the news or slap on, you know, your latest development and send it out. And it can be, you know, a free press release, because you don't always have to use the services. To be honest, I never, you know, unless somebody sends me the press release from PR Newswire, I don't necessarily see it. It's just, the reality is we're a tiny staff. We do a bunch of things, and we kind of look through the wires, but not really. I mean, it's not something we always have time for. So the press releases that I see are ones that people actually email to me, whether it's on the wire, whether it's on PR Newswire, Business Wire, or any of those. If it's not emailed, a lot of times I don't see it. I know my fellow editors are the same way. So I would suggest, you know, if you do write a press release, just to make sure that you mail it to the people that you want to mail it to, don't rely on the service getting it out there, because their idea of getting it out there is putting it on the wire, and if we don't happen to search for the keywords and see it, we miss it. So that would be my suggestion. And as far as just having the boilerplate stuff at the ready, photo and logo and all that kind of good stuff along with it. And I love to get a kind of press release or a pitch or whatever that has a logo and a photo and all that along with it, or video, that kind of thing. It's great too, especially for the blog. And I love guest posts.
So somebody could write a guest post about their startup?
Yeah, if it's not too promotional, I mean, it's not going to be, but there's a lot of ways to write guest posts without being promotional. You can share your expertise, you can, without being overly promotional, and I welcome those, because, sharing your journey as an entrepreneur, lessons learned, you go to, I don't know, if he's going to a collision conference in Las Vegas, he's going to write about that. Things like that, can be, I welcome those kinds of posts. Sharing your expertise on something, sharing lessons learned, that kind of thing. And I mean, one thing I want to say is, okay, this is going to sound a little self-serving, but what I was saying. I mean, I'm in an industry that's shrinking every day. My editors, they're looking at resources. They're looking at which beats we're covering and which we're not, and how do we shift people around. So anyway, the more you guys click on my blog, it helps. Just honestly, to be honest. I mean, really, because it's, or stories or whatever, because they're always looking at that. And right now, they're really, into tech, and that's great in entrepreneurship, but, it can change. There's the real estate market, whatever, so.
So retweets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow, retweet. And so sometimes people come to you and give you an idea for a guest post before writing it then, so they kind of clear it first and know that you're in for it.
Yes, and I say this, and right now I have like 3 guest posts that people have sent me I haven't had a chance to look at, so I mean, it's not always, because I'm really under it on a project this week and last week, it's not always going to be immediate, and don't take it personally if it's not, but most people do send me some ideas or whatever, and they say, great, do it, and they send it. So at one point I was getting 1 or 2 a week, slowed down a little bit, and part of it is me, because like I said, I have 3 right now that I need to look at, but that's basically how it is, yeah.
That's great. Okay, well...
and I welcome it. I love guest posts, really.
Awesome. So it's an easy way to get published.
Yes. And also sometimes events that I don't cover, like I had a guest post this week on WordCamp, that kind of thing. I welcome that as well.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, well, we're going to open it up for Q&A, and those of you who registered as VIP, part of the benefit to that, I apologize, you're supposed to get first row seats, and this is my first time doing this, so next month, the second Tuesday of the month, we'll be doing this on the second Tuesday of every month, I will go back through Eventbrite and find you and send you a promo code for a free ticket to next month's event. And next month's event, the front 2 rows will be VIP and first to Q&A. But I will go on the honor system now and go ahead and open up Q&A first to those who registered as VIP, and then we'll move into the rest of the Q&A. Anyone?
And if nobody has questions, I'll ask you.
Anyone want to take advantage of that now? Okay, Lewis?
So I love guest posts too, but I don't know if you heard recently, Matt Cutts, he began analyzing a lot of guest networks, and it's been contradictory as to publishing your work in other sites. I don't know if you've seen anything where Matt cuts penalize guest blogs. So are you concerned about that at all, or is it?
I haven't personally determined, I haven't heard that, so that's interesting. I don't know. But I mean, Starting Gate has always been a community, I consider it, and it's always been a community resource, and that's why I started it. I basically started it to not only be a place where you could find everything that the Herald has written about startups, entrepreneurship, technology, whatever, in one place, because when the time I started, I told you we didn't have a beat writer, therefore, but we had people who were writing it on their own beats, and it was a place to collect it all. But it's always also been a place where I'll put, event notices that people send me, press releases that people send me, and also guest posts. So it's always been that way.
And just to repeat the question in case anyone didn't ask it, Lewis is asking about guest posting, and as far as Matt Cutts recently started saying, it's kind of the next thing Google's going to start cracking down on. And does Nancy fear that there may be some issues with guest posting? And my background is in SEO and internet marketing. I've been doing SEO for about 11 years now. And I think if I can put my 2 cents in, it's important not to abuse anything. And Nancy mentioned that, as long as your post isn't extremely self-serving, and you're on a very credible source too. You're not on a blog that's selling itself out to guest posting. And Nancy, I'm sure, will help you keep the frequency down too, which blogs that sell themselves out to guest posting will allow you to post there very frequently, as long as you're willing to pay for it or exchange a guest post. So as long as you don't abuse it, I think guest posting is a real value to the internet, and as long as you keep doing it as providing value to the internet rather than influencing your SEO directly, I personally think we won't know until the next Google animal update comes. But but I personally think you'd be perfectly fine getting a guest post on something like Nancy's blog.
Yes, I was wondering, regarding the financing aspect of the project, what is your opinion or your experience or your feedback regarding the crowdfunding aspect, like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, which is more and more kind of what kind of feedback do you have regarding that?
Well, it's certainly fun to watch. I mean, it's sad that so many, the great majority of Kickstarters and Indiegogos, they don't make their goals. And so, as long as you go in there with obviously you're going to go in there to try to win, but, the reality is most of the great majority of them don't. So, I mean, I always feel sad when some of the local projects that I look at early, didn't get there. But I think it's a great resource. I mean, I think it's we've certainly had some success stories and projects locally, and I think that's pretty interesting. And it's interesting to watch the equity coming alive and see what the SEC does with that. But it's nice that there's that resource, especially for product companies.
In Dahlberg, I'm sure you do a lot of research on entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs, so I'm curious to know what do you think is the #1 reason why entrepreneurs fail?
The question is, with all the research that Nancy has done in entrepreneurship, what does she think the #1 reason is that entrepreneurs fail?
Run out of money? I mean, that's what I hear. I mean, unfortunately. Yeah, burn through the cash. You guys tell me. That's what I hear.
You can see how long of a mic cord we have here.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Good? All right, thank you.
Nancy, for coming again and joining us and sharing with us your experience. There seems to be this great passion and a great community here trying to get Miami Tech really established. And you know, we're a competitive city. We want to be just up there with Boston and Silicon Valley. What is it that we can do as a community so that we can say, hey, right now we're number, who knows what we are because I haven't seen the numbers, but how can we get to number 3 within the next 2 years or in the next year as a community? What do we need to do together?
Wow, that's a good question. What do you all think? I mean, really, I mean, more of what's more, right? I mean, I think the funding network isn't something that is not under our control, but I think that that's really important to get more the funding networks that we have more organized and to get more and VC funding. I mean, I think that that's key. But as far as what we can do sitting here, I don't know, does anybody have any ideas? I mean, Glenn.
Thank you, Nancy. It's a pleasure to see you again. As a matter of fact, we saw each other last week at eMerge. And as a matter of fact, there is a solution that I believe. And as we all know the simple concept of do what you do best and outsource the rest, right? So then the main concept is do your concept. But then the main thing that always hinders everyone is financials. So how can you do that? We involve our local institutions. We have the brilliant minds of the University of Miami students, and we have brilliant minds from FIU students. So why don't we put them to work? We redirect their minds from corporate America to see how we can create financials for your organizations, how we could create budgeting plans, how we could create fundraising curriculums. It's all within our institutions, and all it needs to be is tact. And as we've spoken before, I represent a nonprofit tech group where we operate by trying to inform entrepreneurs that there are ways of budgeting, there are free ways of doing everything. You just need to reach out to us, to students. We want to involve ourselves into the community, and we want the community to involve us.
Very good. You know, hiring interns, hiring local, and now that's important. Trying to get our students involved in startups and learning the startup life. I think that will help.
Start early.
Hi, my name is Alfonso, and I grew up in Miami, and I've been in this startup community for about 3 years now. So my perspective on how Miami can get better is that Miami needs to be thought of as a product itself. And the primary consumers for the product that we're looking to bring in are investors, entrepreneurs, and developers. And each one has its own, they're each 3 different markets that we need to think of intelligently in order to reach them and get them to buy into Miami. For entrepreneurs, they need to feel that they've got customers here and the talent pool and the capital in which to do things. Investors, for them to buy into it, they feel that they've got to have good entrepreneurs who have business sense, have a product that will sell to customers, and that already have either the product prototyped or ready to go. And so the big problem with Miami right now is the business community is terrible, okay? People don't like working here, which is one of the reasons why so many people start their own companies. Management is awful. And I blame that primarily on the existing management in the companies and the business schools. So that has to be improved. So things like Startup Grind, articles that Nancy puts out, and Trep Transit and Refresh Miami and other things that promote learning about how to do your business, how to think about how to improve your startup are what's really going to push us forward. In order to be better than Silicon Valley, or even get close to Silicon Valley, New York, and Boston, we need to think like better business people. We have to think like real business people, not just kids doing a class project. This has got to be real. And running out of money is not an excuse. You got to think that you don't have money, and how are you going to succeed with a lack of money? And there are a lot of companies here in Miami that are ready and willing to buy products and to use tech and to use local talent if you show them you've got a winning value proposition. That's the primary thing. Then you can bring in your developers and your tech team from across the world. But the first thing is get your act together, learn how to do business, and then Miami will be a better product to sell to everyone else.
Hi, Nancy. I'm Gianni. My question is the difference between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca, as we go up, because I do the Bitcoin meetup group in Miami, and I recently visited the Fort Lauderdale one, and I saw a lot more, I would say, educated people that are really interested in collaborating with ideas. And sometimes when I come to Miami in some of these groups, it's kind of superficial. It's a little bit difficult to get the meat and get the real people that are really involved. You see it here on Open Hack Nights, you get the real crowd of people, the different hackathons and things like that. How do you see the difference between our South Florida counties in the startup space? Is there more financing in Fort Lauderdale? Is there more financing down here? The startups that you're seeing developing, just in general terms.
Well, in general terms, I guess, the numbers show that the Boca Raton area is getting more, a little bit more financing, companies in the Boca area. I mean, that's what the VC and angel numbers show. My primary focus is down here, so I don't get up there as much as I'd like. But when I have, to events. They're usually smaller, but like you said, yeah, very engaged small groups. Definitely interested in growing more. I mean, I talked to this fellow in Palm Beach this past week. He got me on the phone. He was telling me all about his new co-working space and this meetup and that meetup in Palm Beach, and how it's grown. These things have grown from 20 people to now 50 in a few months, and how he was very excited about that. So what I'm hearing is these areas are definitely starting to come alive for sure. And like I said, a new co-working space in Fort Lauderdale, right there in the middle, that can't hurt either. I mean, it's supposed to be like twice as big or 3 times as big as this, so yeah.
And we're all one South Florida community too. We don't have to go out and set up ourselves. So let's be maybe a little more collaborative. Be willing to drive over the county line for an event every once in a while. Like we all. I think we go like, oh, I'm from Miami, I stay in Miami, or I'm from Miami Beach, I don't even go over those bridges. So those of you that did today, thank you. And just get out more. If you're passionate about it, your work becomes your hobby, and the lines start to blur, and it's okay. You don't mind going to work. So if you don't mind going to work, don't mind going out more and doing more things like this, and just spend more time out and let the county lines blur as well.
Yeah, and I think the county lines will start blurring more. I really do. I think that when I did a story on the maker movement, it was pretty interesting that they had 5 or 6 groups from Palm Beach Gardens all the way down to Miami that have all aligned and become one group, and they spaced themselves out on purpose regionally. I thought that was really cool. So not one, they're not really, they're just, spaced out right down 95. So I think you'll see more of that. Makers Union, they call themselves.
Anyone else?
Hi there.
Hi.
I want to go back to the subject about Miami. and its community. I'm from Brazil. I came with a very special mission here to Miami. We developed the early shares platform. We are developers from Brazil. And my company, when was considering coming to the United States, they sent me to Miami just to evaluate the market here. So I'm staying here the whole May, understanding how Miami works, what Miami can do, since we made our client here, that's the early share, whole platform of it. We are considering this, and sure, you guys are being compared with New York and other places. What I would like to say, listening to what he told me here was great. Don't look only for Miami. Understand that's a worldwide. We are dealing with companies in the whole world, and my worry is that Miami is way too much worried to look just inside. And there's plenty of opportunities coming from everywhere in the world. We are one of the fastest growing company in agile development from Brazil. We are very reliable and very cheap to produce with us. And then I see the developers here, I'm seeing the entrepreneurs here, mostly asking for development. I went to the co-founders lab, the website, many entrepreneurs looking for development. And I don't see yet how the environment is working to put together all the entrepreneurs with the developers, and that's been hard for me to figure out. I'm spending here the month in the lab exactly to understand this. So I can tell you already, it's been a challenge. I see a market grows a lot, but I don't see yet how it's working. I had a meeting with, and you were there also, I had a meeting with Matt Hagen from Knight Foundation. He told me to be in the lab to understand how the environment, how the startup environment of Miami is working, and how can it fit my company or the company here in this environment. And I hope that I can figure out. So what I'm trying to say is just that. Don't just look to inside Miami. Be careful, because many companies are considering coming to Miami. We are here in Miami, and we want to help the environment here. I don't want to say to my company, just close the office in Miami. We got an office here in Miami now. Close the office in Miami and let's go to New York. I would like to stay here in Miami. I enjoy Miami, and I hope I can find here that it has a business environment that we can grow here. That's it.
And I would say that we're still figuring it out. So, you know, we're a startup city too. And yeah, there's certainly more work that can be done, coordination and who does what. And we're still a little siloed, but you know, I think Matt gave me good advice about just coming here, and
yeah.
I hope that
I'm trying to share and meet many people. That's been my challenge right now. How to help this environment to improve and to get my project going in the web.
Yeah, we're a couple of years in the making. We were a multi-million-dollar exit right now. A couple of years in the making. We'd be an incredible success story. So I think we've done a lot in a couple of years, and it's about us. The people that come out, you guys come out to these types of things, and you know, one of the reasons we don't have a free event for Startup Grind is to bring out the people that are more serious, that are here willing to invest their time and a few dollars to support us in putting these types of things together, and to bring a more serious crowd together. So, you know, tonight, take advantage of that more serious crowd being here. You guys have come together tonight, meet each other, spend that time, get out of the comfort zone, and take advantage of opportunities like this. And that's what will make us grow much more quickly than we have. Any other questions?
Hello, Nancy. My name is Dean. I want to thank you because you actually helped us get the word out about an event that our organization was doing a couple months back. But you mentioned something that I find interesting, because I'm probably the most low-tech person here. No, because as a company, what we do is really low-tech. But you mentioned something about basically how the media is consolidating and how stories are having to be shared. How does that play out how do you see that playing out going forward? Is it eventually all just going to be one big thing? Because if shrinkage is such that you're sharing stories. How does that play out when you start to move to that arena?
Oh boy, I mean, we're still trying to figure that out. I don't know. Right now, bigger minds than me are trying to figure that out, but we're transitioning, and we're transitioning slowly because it's tough when you're a traditional media company doing the same way for a gazillion years. I don't know, but you know, the finances being what they are has forced us to do a lot more sharing than what we used to do, and actually, you know, that part of it is actually better. I mean, why have 3 reporters covering the same story? Why not, if we can get, you know, a similar kind of run-of-the-mill, you know, news story from one of us, and then the other 2 can be doing other things. I mean, it makes sense on a lot of levels that everybody doing the same press conference or something like that. So there's some things that have come out of our changes that have been good, and that's one of them. But what the future holds, I don't know. I mean, more niche, obviously, seems to be a trend, and you know, we're at our paper, we're in our media company, we're constantly trying new products and new niche publications, whether they're online or offline type of things, targeted stuff, because that's kind of where they see it going right now, but I don't know.
I think that was a great answer for not knowing. Anyone else? Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Romel. Nancy, a pleasure meeting you. First time here in the lab. I'm here sharing a room with extraordinary people, extraordinary minds. I looked at each individual and they go way beyond the dreams. I was listening to a couple of them. How can, if we fail in business, I mean, how can we avoid that? The only person who could avoid that is himself, is yourself, as a person. You have to educate yourself in where you're going, in the subject that you're going, or the business that you're going, and learn from the people who've been doing the business more, who've been successful in the business. And there's 3 things when starting a business. There's one thing that I call, this is my personal opinion, enjoying what you do, loving what you do, and dying for what you do. That's going to keep you from hitting rock bottom. And there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of things that you can do to try to avoid that. Perfect example, you're here with us, sharing your experiences. We learn from those things. We put them to use, we write them down, and we put them to work. How can we expose ourselves? How can the world know us, who we are? It all depends on you. It is the individual who's got to do more for themselves so we could be recognized in this atmosphere that we are. And then we start getting the recognition from all the places on the planet. We have a gentleman here from Brazil, you know, which warm welcome here to Miami. We are engaging ourselves 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. We didn't have this type of events. We didn't have them. And technology and new entrepreneurial is guiding to socializing businesses. If like I said, please give a round of applause for our gentleman here, because I mean, thank you for looking at Miami as your base here, you know. And that's what people love. That's what people enjoy. As human beings, we enjoy being warm, when you know, being treated nice. And that's what business is turning into. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up, and so that way you guys can all turn to the people next to you, behind you, get to know one another, make some new friends. One of the core values of Startup Grind is to make friends, not connections. You know, don't go see how many business cards you can get in your pocket tonight. See how many words you can exchange with one person, meaningful words, and really make a new friend tonight.